Welcome to Unreal City Live, a series of free digital talks celebrating Unreal City, London's biggest public festival of AR art, which is open now. I'm Thomas Gorton, Editorial Director of Special Projects at Dazed, and I'm delighted to be here today with Bjarne Melgaard, the Norwegian artist who's been described as one of the country's most important and controversial artists. Bjarne has 4 works in Unreal City, hybrids of human and animal, slightly disgruntled-looking misshapen men called Cheese Man and Devil Man, a collection of characters that have appeared in Bjarne's work previously over the years. Using the Acute art app, these characters come alive through your smartphone as you walk through the public exhibition. Hello, Bjarne. How are you?
Hey, I'm fine. How are you?
Yes, very well. Where are you? Are you in Norway? Are you at home in Norway?
I'm located in Oslo, in my flat in Norway.
Okay. Well, yeah. Thank you for connecting with us over Zoom, and kind of. I wanted to start today, just by talking about Unreal City, which looks amazing. I've had a run through of it, and also look at some of the work. So I'm just gonna share my screen, and get that up. And I just wanted to talk to you mainly, I guess, about how the work was created, and also why. So let me just.
Well, I mean, basically the works are from the VR I produced to the Acute art last year, which called My Trip, and the character have been reworked and kind of recontextualized for Real City, and yeah, and they are yeah, they are what they are. Huh?
And so just let's show the audience and just kind of go through. They look really beautiful and kind of uncanny, set against the kind of London backdrop. How does it feel to kind of see them in this kind of environment?
It feels kind of amazing and also a bit strange because it's like the same, like I have this show now in Paris and I cannot go there, so you kind of you always start to experience all these shows and all these events just from a computer screen, which is very it's not how I usually would view my shows, because I would go there in person. So
Yeah, I mean it's an unusual thing and an unusual kind of reality, I guess, that we've kind of been forced into now, in 2020, and I think we spend enough time, on our smartphones, generally, and you just talked about kind of viewing the work in this different way, and do you see people increasingly consuming art through our devices going forward, and kind of, and how do you feel about that, the medium changing, outside of the gallery?
I definitely feel like, what was in one of your questions that you sent me was that we are maybe moving towards a more democratic art world, a world where art is more available for a broader audience, and also like the class divide between art and the artist and the artworks are kind of flattening out more. And that's what I think is kind of amazing with these AR projects. Like you can reach so many people that you wouldn't originally reach by doing more like a gallery show or something like that. So yeah, I do think it's very exciting to be a part of.
And normally you would present solo, and having presented in Unreal City alongside other famous artists, Olafur Elias, and do you feel with this that you're sort of kind of part of the art establishment? You're such a rebel by nature. Does that make you feel uncomfortable in any way? And how do you feel that your work sits alongside everyone else's work or relates to it?
I think that definitely my work is sits next to the other ones in maybe a very different way. I mean, I also think the artists who are in the show, they are also have made AR and VR with the Acute art, and so did I last year. This is My Trip, which these characters comes from, and but I don't. I do feel like I see my work and my characters more isolated from the other artists, and I don't know if I feel like it's being a part of an establishment or not. I feel that what's great about this new AR thing is that it's something that so many more people can be actual with. But what's also interesting is to think about which artist does this medium fit, because there are also like a lot of artists who are working with motifs or characters or works that basically won't go down very well in AR. So we're also talking about this democratic spirit, like here everybody can join making AR, but it isn't actually like that, because some people's works they will kind of diminish in an AR.
I feel like actually your work really suits it. Because AR by nature is kind of, it's playful. And I see your work and your art, not just these kind of characters, but your paintings as being, kind of playful. And I think that spirit in your work, kind of carries over to AR very well. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, but I do think that also with the characters and with the whole AR thing, there is this there is a kind of how should I say it, side to it that is very immediate. Experience is very immediate and very fast, and it's kind of catchy, and it has also this kind of like a fast gimmick that I think can be sometimes a relief, is there that you have to go through all this material to experience a show.
A lot of your previous work has been I hope you don't mind me saying, but escapist in its nature, with a lot of references to like drugs and sex. And we actually, I don't know if you remember, but I interviewed you I think 3 years ago about the Bjarne Melgaard Muppet, which I loved, and really liked. Yes, the Red Bull show, Casual Pleasure of Disappointment.
Yes,
it was called.
Yes, that was the last show I did before I left New York.
Yeah, and I loved that. And then you did the fashion magazine with Babak, Radboy.
Yes.
I really loved. And it.
No.
Say that again.
No, go on.
Well, a lot of your work, I guess, is quite like, kind of charged, or kind of sexually charged. It's quite like escapist. A lot of it's like drug fueled, and it's exciting for that reason. And I also was looking at the work that you did in 2019 with Acute art, which referenced a DMT trip, ordering from the dark net, ordering drugs from the dark net, and I just wondered how generally, and I wanted to talk about psychedelic drugs, generally anyway after this in 2020, but how have they influenced your work? And did you draw on memories of those experiences to create your work for Unreal City?
Yes and no. I mean, I do definitely think that for the characters in Unreal City, that they are basically characters that are revamped or redone for the Unreal City, and in my trip, that was basically trying to have a dialogue about new psychedelia, new realities, new ways to escape. And also, now since this all this research on new psychedelia, but it was interesting to kind of take that into the work and see how it will go.
I'm quite fascinated by the resurgence of psychedelic drugs as I perceive it in the 2010s. There's been two stages of the resurgence of psychedelic drugs. One kind of came from Silicon Valley and came from, tech guys microdosing, with magic mushrooms, but it was an acid and a lot of different, or going to Peru, for ayahuasca retreats and things like that. But it was geared towards a sort of productivity focus, something that was very linked to capitalism, I felt. Whereas now I think those psychedelic drugs have kind of come back into fashion again, but I think it's a rejection of that world entirely, and it's actually people wanting to reconnect with the earth rather than kind of productivity or business. So what do you think about the kind of resurgence of psychedelic drugs in society, and why do you think that's happening?
Well, I do think I agree with you that I think that it has these two stages. That one was like, tech guys in Silicon Valley was seeing how much can I microdose to make my daily life even more efficient, and just and then you suddenly had this switch of somewhere where you suddenly were,
Mhm.
you know, like where people were more into like the experience itself, and you know, what can it do, you know, how can it broaden your consciousness, how can it broaden your mind, your conception of things. And I feel like that is uh, yes, it's important, I think.
And do you still experiment with psychedelic drugs? Is that something that's still sort of in your life and in your kind of creative practice at all?
Not right now, but I definitely feel like they have been. I definitely draw from personal experiences in the my trip
Hmm.
um, uh, VR.
Hmm.
And I think, you know, if you want to speak about psychedelics, I also think you need to try them, no?
Yes. Yeah.
Or it becomes a little bit, yeah.
Um, yeah, no, I certainly agree with you, and it's been interesting certainly, and I definitely noticed over lockdown and COVID, you know, people weren't going to parties, people weren't doing party drugs or anything like that, but a lot of people kind of, you know, reconnecting with Earth or you know or whatever,
But,
and that's why
but don't you also think it is because suddenly we had so much more time?
yes, yes.
Tea was also so much like, I mean, it became like also kind of like a businessman's trip, because it lasts like for 15-20 minutes and you're out of it. But if you
Hmm.
take like a real LSD trip, it stays like 12-15 hours. And now
Yeah.
we have all this time, so we can just sit in our living rooms and trip all day long if we want, no?
Yeah,
There's
I
nothing
think we
else
should
to
keep
do.
that.
Huh?
We should keep that moving forward. That's what we should keep, you know,
I
moving.
think that's really one of the benefits from you know, lockdown, is that we suddenly have all this time that maybe we could use for something fulfilling, and something
Hmm.
that could possibly broaden our minds and connect us more to Earth, and connects us more to our human beings.
Hmm.
And
It's interesting you talk about, you know, kind of what you us having more time or things you've learned during lockdown. You know, how has your perspective, you know, shifted during 2020? Not just on art, but just on, you know, on life itself. You know, and kind of what do you want to what do you want to leave behind in 2020, and what do you want to kind of take forward once we kind of return to some semblance of normality, as it were?
well, I do think that maybe what happened was that, you know, we were given this time out in many
Hmm.
ways, and it left a kind of a place where you could reflect more, where you had
Hmm.
time to really think about things. I mean, I, for instance, had a very productive quarantine. I mean,
Right.
I wrote a whole novel,
Wow.
and it's coming out next year on this, and uh, and also I was working on several shows and stuff like that. But I I don't know what I would. I think I do feel like all the isolation and the kind of like, you know, how can I say it? What I would leave behind. Actually, yeah. I mean, I would. Um, I think. I think the. I think the the way I've been able to reflect more
Hmm.
on my career, on my paintings, on my work, has been fairly good. So, but I
Hmm.
don't know what I would take with me next year. I hope next year will be better than 2020.
Yeah, please tell us about your novel though.
Yeah, that's a novel that comes out on next year, and you know, like it's my first novel in Norwegian.
Hmm. All right, cool.
So I kind of think I've been dealing a lot with Norwegian culture, Norwegian references, stuff like that. And you
Hmm.
know, and it has been, you know, like I think that I started the lockdown where, you know, I was really like, "Yeah, wow, let's get to work, have lots of free time," and then
Hmm.
it gets increased into this kind of more or less kind of depressive state, where you
Hmm.
just felt like, I started to feel like, you know, every time we were planning to go somewhere, like, you know, for instance, for Paris, there was a lockdown, you couldn't go anyway, you know, you wanted to go somewhere. I mean,
Hmm.
and that whole thing not being able to go anywhere. I think it also was kind of heavy psychologically for me.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that one thing that I found difficult is not being able to have things to look forward to in the same way. You know,
Yeah.
not being able to plan that, and I think it created a flatness. You know, a flatness to existence, which which is still sort of here. You know, and still kind of very much going on. I mean, there's kind of good news on the horizon. I think one thing that I found difficult as well about lockdown was how everybody kind of gravitated to social media, which was good in some ways, and then also bad in others. And I think that was those screens we've just talked about smartphones earlier at the kind of like at the beginning of this call, and used in a positive way for AR. But I'm interested. Obviously we spend all our time on these devices, and I'm interested in a lot of people have loads of different things to say about social media's impact on culture. You have, rightly or wrongly, you have a controversial past. People have been critical of your work and people adore it. And what effect do you think social media has had on the art world? Has it created freedom or restriction, do you think?
I don't know. I mean, during lockdown, I went out. I closed down my Instagram account, and I do think we have this whole dialogue or reflections about how this interconnectivity is going to kind of make us better. It's going to serve for the greater good. But I do also feel like this crazy amount of time we're supposed to spend in front of a computer. Like, for instance, I mean, like, I've had done so many Zoom things, so many conferences on the computer, and it's you can really talk about a Zoom fatigue soon, because you get,
Yes.
while I really, to be honest, I don't really know anymore hardly what to say. I just feel like you are like Zoom. You also, like, what's interesting is that you look at just like before, when I was younger, people used to say, like, oh, I hate to see films of myself, or I hate to see photos of myself. And suddenly now we're getting so used to seeing our own image. And I feel also like I see my own decay, like like, my God, I just look worse from each Zoom, from each Zoom to another. And you just feel like, oh God, not again. But so I do feel, I mean, for me, I do feel like we're gonna have some kind of counterpart to that, where people are saying, like, enough, I don't want to connect anymore. I mean, and I think that when you spoke also about the show, and I saw one of the questions you wrote to me was about the glitchiness of these wallpapers in the Row Patch show in Paris. And I think that one of the reasons why I did that was because the paintings are very small, and they kind of, like, everybody says, why are you making such small paintings on such big wallpaper? But I do feel like it's also a little bit how I felt, or how I think a lot of people feel, like you just had this enormous kind of interconnectivity and Zoom and virtual realities, and and in the end you're stuck by yourself at home in front of a computer. So I'm also seeing those small paintings a little bit like like almost stagnated Zoom conferences, in a way.
Yeah, I know. I really know exactly what you mean by Zoom fatigue, and we're both watching our own decay here right now. But I know exactly what you mean. And sometimes, when you get on a call and you're like, "Do you know what? I look like shit. Camera off. I can't look at that. I can't see it." But it's funny. Everybody's confronting that. Everybody's confronting, like how they look all the time. I never look in the mirror this much ever. People generally don't know what they look like. I feel like I've confronted my own face, and developed new neuroses about my face. I'm not really insecure about that stuff, but now I'm just like, oh my God, like you start like looking at it. It's funny, you're right. You look at your own decay,
Yeah, but I also feel like like, even if we have all this kind of dialogues that we're talking, I also feel like during this Zoom call, I'm also secretly watching myself all the time. Also,
yes.
like how do I look when I talk? How do I look when I laugh? How do I look? What did I say? Because also, it's like you have one Zoom and it's like one go. So if you don't
Mm-hmm.
get it there, it's kind of like that's it. It's not like,
It's,
yeah,
it's probably made us all more vain, maybe. You
yes.
know?
And so I think that it's also like I'm more self-centered.
Yes. Yeah.
Like it's just self-centered about how we look, or what we really actually are. We important? Do we have something of importance to say, and all this
Yeah.
kind of stuff? So yeah.
You mentioned that you deleted your Instagram at the beginning of lockdown, but I'm interested in, as an artist, and we're just talking about the pressures of social media and the pressures of the way that we're all talking and communicating. Do you feel a pressure to use Instagram? Do you feel that as an artist, to be connected in that way?
Definitely. Like when I took off my Instagram, people were asking me directly if I was if I was well, or how are you doing, or like, are you, is something wrong? and
Yeah.
and you definitely felt the pressure from people you work with that you should have a presence on Instagram.
Hmm.
And also, why aren't you, because also I took away, where people can tag you.
Hmm.
So people were like, why can't I tag you anymore? And I just feel like this whole idea how Instagram and how information works and how it flows through each other, it becomes so
Hmm.
superficial after a while. I
Hmm.
just feel like, also I'm, sometimes I also wonder, like, how much knowledge do we really need? Do we really need to be so informed about absolutely everything? Like when I started out, I started out as an artist in 1990s.
Hmm.
We had to like wait for flash art to come out every second month to be updated. And now you have this immense flow of information, and you're also supposed to have all this information to contribute with. And I just felt like after a while, I felt like I was getting depressed from it.
Hmm.
I also felt it was stupefying to, like, sitting posting, every dumb thing you say or do. And it's also like, so for me, I felt like a relief to just let that go. And if I,
Hmm.
and yeah.
And do you miss that kind of anonymity of the 1990s?
Definitely.
Hmm.
Like I miss that also, that feeling like so much more was possible to have a discourse about. Where I think that we were, now you have all this cancel culture, you have all these things that it has to be so PC everything. And I miss that more, being able to openly have a dialogue about issues that can be difficult to talk about without getting 5,000 DMs where they hate you.
That's interesting though that you talk about that, because I regard you, and you're a fearless artist, really. I think. And so, has that kind of fear of being cancelled? Do you feel like that's affected your work in any way?
No, because I don't think that my work reached such a huge audience. Maybe if I had like 500,000 followers on Instagram, maybe, but I don't have that. I haven't felt like that. That I have to, like, but I do think that we all, if we want to admit it or not, I think there is now a kind of collective paranoia
Hmm.
that we all go through this, like, what am I like? I have also feel it just by a Zoom conference.
Hmm.
Like, what am I going to say now? Is this suddenly going to, that?
Hmm.
And I think it also has this one thing that we are aware of, that we are small and we are in a group and we are all this into this all together. But it also it become like we watch ourselves in this egocentric bubble, like where every little thing we blabber about can be taken out of context and blown up to insane proportions.
Hmm.
I think that's something that's so crazy about the time right now. So that was also one thing why I went off Instagram
Hmm.
also.
Yeah, I agree. I think I often think this, where I see there's a lot of chaos surrounding something someone said, and I think if someone said that in the pub, it would be forgotten about in 30 seconds, if
Yeah.
that. you know, but because it's sort of published and it's committed to kind of the digital realm, it has this, it carries this unnecessary weight, which I think we're still struggling. I think because the way this technology has evolved far faster than we have or can, you know, emotionally, you know, so that's the awkwardness that's the pivotal point that we find ourselves at. It's kind of sort of having this technology at our disposal, and it's kind of quite unnatural for us to be able to talk to millions of people now. Like if I wanted to, just being able to do that, sort of feels, you know, that doesn't feel like something that should just happen over a period of 10 years, but it has, you know, like, so I think that's where those kind of slip ups happen, or because we're not quite at ease with the technology that we've made or the world that we've made for ourselves.
Yeah.
And I had another question for you, which is kind of like, we're talking about how this is sort of now the way that we're talking, even over Zoom, is normal. But, you know, do you think that social media is real life? Do you think I wanted to talk to you about reality, you know, really? Do you see the ways that in those methods of communication as real, you know?
No, I don't. Well, that's one of the reasons I wanted to get off it, because I think it's like, it's so like people are like, you know, photoshopping their images. They are like, you know, posting photos of themselves that doesn't even look like themselves. And I do feel like it's really is a move into a kind of an almost anti-reality, like, you know, where people can actually propose and publicize images of themselves exactly as they really dream of how they would be, and they're not even close to it in real life.
Yeah, no, I agree. And also, I read something that you'd done in 2019 about your previous VR exhibition, where, you know, you were questioning, you know, am I still relevant, you know, and having been making work for 20 years. And do you think that post-COVID and the world that we're in now, do you think all artists struggle for relevance, or are artists now more important than ever?
I think both. I think that I do think that, you know, in the COVID has left it like some artists get a lot of attention, and due to this interconnectivity and this whole idea of virtual dialogues, that some people can't follow, or their work doesn't, and they fall off the wagon. So I think that yes, we have in many ways artists and people who are benefiting from it, and that we have at the same time, I see people that I know myself who just, you don't hear anything about them anymore.
I really want to. You mentioned it earlier. We touched upon it, but I love the look of your exhibition at ROPAC. So I just wanted to share my screen again, and maybe if you could talk through a few of the work, because you talked about the backgrounds, you know, and let me just get it up for a second. Here we go. Oh yeah, here we go. So if I now, God, it's so annoying. Share screen. Oh yeah. So share screen and then preview. So it takes ages. Can you see that all good?
Yes, I see it.
Okay, cool. So yeah, I love the way that the work's presented, you know, and I think actually the way that it's presented, or the way that I'm kind of looking at it, you know, and you touched on it slightly before, but it feeds into this kind of information content overload, you know, kind of world that we're living in now. But could you just talk through these paintings and talk through the way that you've decided to present them and you've decided to hang them? I really love it.
You know, the wallpaper is done by Martin Kvamme. He's the one who do all the graphics for Mike Patton. So
right.
and I do think that the paintings are done, of course, in, you know, as isolation or COVID or whatever. But to me, also, like, COVID wasn't that much of a big change for me as a painter, because I'm basically alone in my studio painting anyway, and I have my studio downstairs from where I live. So I mean, but I do feel like I wanted to talk about these paintings as almost little screens that are trying to exist in this kind of interconnectivity hell of, you know, social media, digital reality, you know, all these things. And also, if you look at close, you can see that there's images of Elizabeth Wurtzel, the writer who wrote Prozac Nation. So
Yeah.
the wallpapers are actually a lot, like also like not these paintings so much, but other paintings. They also deal a lot with, my reflection upon Elizabeth Wurtzel and what she had to say about isolation, depression, feeling like you're not going anywhere. And I think that became, I mean, I started rereading her during lockdown, and I think that it felt, her writing felt very relevant again.
For sure. I love it. I think it looks great. And it's really interesting to hear the backstory about Prozac Nation too.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, that's the wrong one. Yeah, this one I
Yeah.
wanted to talk to you about.
So also, like, if you, of course, you can see that it has something to do with my spelling mistake also, like, because Elizabeth is not written this way, Elizabeth Wurtzel. So this is just the same kind of painting, they're painted very abruptly. I mean, I also, I also felt like, like during this lockdown, you get so impatient. Like I just don't feel, so I was just slamming these paintings together, and then you have this background that is much more connected and much more designed maybe than the paintings themselves. And also, like, what you see is also like from another hero of mine, which is Lydia Lunch, which I actually
I love Lydia Lunch.
I think she's amazing. And like that some of what you can see, some of these are like screenshots from the movie Fingered with Richard Kern, and also it's Jack Donahue and from Salem, and Elizabeth Wurtzel. So it's also like these characters that felt relevant and felt exciting for me to take up a new dialogue with.
Amazing. Have you ever managed to see Lydia Lunch live? I mean, you must have done, I think.
Yes, but very long time ago. She was actually quite a lot in Oslo.
Right, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Amazing live. I think I saw Lydia Lunch play live 7 or 8 years ago, and it was just so physical and so kind of brutal. Amazing.
Yeah.
And then here, I guess you get a real overview of this kind of information overload thing that you're talking about. But maybe if you could talk about these 3 paintings here, that would be great. Obviously, we've got Elizabeth again, but then looking at the dog and the cat as well.
Well, I mean, I think that like Catwalk and Dog Walk is actually a lithograph I did in 2008, and I took up that theme because I think like 2020 it felt like a dog walk. You felt like you really, God, can I really get up a bed again? And I started. I mean, I feel like I can't wait for 2020 to be over.
Yeah, same.
Same. So I feel those paintings deal with that a lot, and they deal a lot with the references to Elizabeth Wurtzel and Prozac Nation and the Lunch and all that.
Cool. And I'm going to ask you to plug the exhibition. When does this run from? When can people check it out?
It's from it opened on Wednesday, which was I think 9th of December, and it runs to 14th of February.
Okay, amazing. Well, Bjarne, I'm going to stop sharing my screen there. I've absolutely loved talking to you. It's been fascinating, and thank you for your brilliant work. It's been really great. Just getting the chance to talk to you. So everybody who's watching, please check out Unreal City and also Bjarne's exhibition at Ropac. Thank you so much, Bjarne, and let's stay in touch.
Okay, thank you. Have a nice day. Bye. Ciao.